Thank you for joining me today on the Moms Who Know podcast, the podcast for moms who know that when they take care of themselves, they can take better care of everyone else. There's a story of a man and his wife who got married many years ago. And as they were engaged and preparing for their wedding, they decided to register, like most of us do, for gifts. But they didn't register for a bunch of different things. They didn't want toasters and towels and bedding. All they wanted was silverware. Real silver. And so the wife picked out a beautiful silver pattern and they registered for forks and knives and spoons. The day of the wedding came. They were married and they received many gifts, and then they went on their honeymoon and they came home and they opened all their gifts. And in all these presents and packages was not one single piece of silver. They didn't get any silverware that they had requested. So they laughed about it and they went on with their lives. They were young and they were poor and they didn't have a lot of money to go out and buy silver. But what would happen is, as the wife would set aside a few dollars here and there, she would save up. And when she had enough, she would go down to the store and she would buy a piece of silverware. And slowly, she was able to get 4 sets of silverware so that they could host, when they had dinner, they could have real silverware for them and their guests. But they would talk about it before their guests came over. She and her husband would talk about, well, do we want to use the real silver or do we want to use the stainless steel? The stainless steel can just be thrown in the dishwasher and the real silver has to be polished. And when you're done polishing it, you wrap it in a special cloth and then they would put it in protection, in protective cases, and then put it under the bed so that no one would steal it. It had this whole process that they had to do in order to protect the silverware. So as the years went on, this wife continued to grow her set of silverware until they had enough for their family. She was always really careful with it. She didn't let her kids play with it. She didn't take it to other people's houses when she was sharing food. She was really protective and careful about her silverware. And her husband says that he always thought she was just a little bit eccentric about this silverware until one day he realized that she knew something he didn't. She realized that when you love something, you treat it differently. And he goes on to talk about something else, but what I want to talk about today is that it's so true. When you love something, you treat it differently. What if you loved your body? What would that mean for the way that you treat it? What if you loved yourself and your own body enough to choose to feel good about your body, to choose to feel good about how you look, about who you are, and the package that you are in? When I was young, my sister was really into art. This is my next sister, younger than me. And I'm the oldest of 8 kids, and she decided to draw a symbol for each person in our family. And I remember one of my sisters had a frog for her symbol. My sister that was drawing it did a rainbow. That was back before rainbows meant anything. It was just a colorful rainbow. And my symbol was a mirror. And the reason she drew a mirror for me is because my family liked to tease me that I was vain. And they said I like to look in the mirror a lot. And they joked, oh, Chanel thinks she's so pretty. She looks in the mirror all the time. Well, the truth is, I don't know if I looked in the mirror more than your average teenage girl, but the truth is I was not looking in the mirror thinking how great I looked. I was looking in the mirror, finding my flaws and my imperfections and seeing everything that was wrong. And I did not like what I saw. I did not like my body. I didn't want to have this body. And in fact, I didn't love my body at all. I grew to really hate my body. I worked really hard to change it. And a lot of times that was not in healthy ways. That was through extreme dieting. And even when it wasn't extreme dieting, when it was things that were maybe, mainstream diets that people would feel okay about, that they wouldn't worry if they heard a girl on this or that diet, they would think, oh, she's just trying to be healthier. The truth was, I was looking for rules outside of myself, looking for something that would help me to find this body, to have this body that I wanted to have, because I believed that if I could look good, if I could look in that mirror and liked what I saw, then I would feel good. I thought that was how it would work. And I went through many years just really trying so hard to look good so that I could feel good. And it never worked. I would sometimes lose weight. I would inevitably gain it back. But even when I was thin, I didn't usually feel good. I always thought there was more I needed to lose. I wanted to look better than I did. And this was a problem for me for many years, probably over 15 years, that I really struggled with that and did not love my body in any sense of the word. I tried to get over it, and I tried to do a little bit better, and I knew there was something else, and I wanted to feel good in my body, but I didn't know how. And like I said, I was just kind of trying to reverse that idea that, well, if I look good, then I can feel good. And so I kept focusing on how I looked. I was able one year to go to girls' camp with my daughter, and one of the adults who was there was talking to the girls, and she said to them, "Girls, God put you in the body that you're in for a reason." And when I heard that, I realized that not only is that true for all those girls, but that was true for me. And if God put me in this body, which I believe that He did, then I get to choose how I'm going to feel about this body. I don't have to choose to curse God and be mad because I'm in this body, but I can think and wonder and learn why. Why am I in this body, and what can I learn from it? So for a long time, I was really focused on trying to change what I did to change my outcome. I was really focused on dieting and exercising and changing the things that I did every day in order to change my outward appearance. James Clear, who is an expert on habits and habit formation, talks about a different way to go about this, and he talks about identity-based habits. I want you to picture kind of like a bullseye, a target, and there are 3 circles. So one in the center, one in the middle, and one on the outside. And he says that basically the outer circle is outcomes. Those are the things that we want to have happen in our lives. That center circle are processes or habits. Those are the things that we do. Processes affect that outer circle of outcomes. But what's in the middle? That center circle is identity. We want identity-based habits. So what does that mean? What is an identity-based habit? What it means is we have to start in the center. We have to start with changing who we are and how we think and what we believe about ourselves. We change the kind of person that we are, then that affects what we do, and then that affects our outcome. So we have to choose to be a person who loves herself enough to see changes. If you think of your identity, if you focus on your identity and changing that first, that's a whole different thing than what I did. I was focused on my outcome. I wanted a certain outcome, and so I was changing my processes to get there. What if I had started with changing my identity? I am a person who takes care of her body. I am a person who loves her body. I am a person who loves her body enough. Now, in this little experience I shared where I was at girls' camp and the woman said that God put you in this body, that was the beginning for me of changing my identity. I became a person who believed that God gave her this body. And it's kind of sad that it took me until my 30s to be a person that believed that, but that is what it was for me. And once I believed that, once that was my identity, I am a person who was given this body by God. then my processes were easier to change because they were changed based on who I was and who I already was. I already was that person who trusted that God gave her this body. Then it was easy to act on that belief, and then my outcomes just naturally followed. So we can love ourselves enough to make that choice to love ourselves. Now, that is a process. It's a process of work and learning to love yourself. The first step in that process is loving yourself enough to change your thoughts. My mom once went to the grocery store, and when she came out, there was a man sitting there begging, and he didn't have any legs. And my mom really didn't want to say the wrong thing. She wanted to help him, and so she approached him. But as she was approaching, she thought, don't say anything about his legs. Don't say anything about his legs. Don't say anything about his legs. And she had a purse, and she was fiddling with her purse and trying to get the zipper open. And it was an old purse and it wouldn't open. And she said, oh, this purse is on its last leg. And then she realized what she had said, and she was so embarrassed. The point is, we have to work on our thoughts. What we think about comes out. If you are thinking, don't say anything about his legs, that is going to come out of your mouth. When we are focused on a certain thought, it comes out. For me, I was focused so much on the imperfections of my body that came out in my actions. The way that I treated myself, the way that I talked, it came out in so many subtle ways that I didn't even realize, but it did come out. Our thoughts affect our behavior, who we think we are, who we believe we are. That affects the things that we do. I want you to think about people that you know who are in bigger bodies. Some people who are a little bit bigger who love their bodies and love themselves. I bet you know someone like that. I know people like that who are comfortable in their own bodies, even though they're in a bigger body. Not what society would say is, this perfect ideal, but they still love their bodies. Now, I bet it's really easy to think of this second group of people. Can you think of someone you know who is thin, who is in, that ideal type that we would say, and that's in quotation marks, that ideal that we see, a thin person who feels insecure in their body. I think we all know so many people like that. So what's the difference between the two? It's not their body type, right? It's not their body type that is making them feel good or insecure. That doesn't make sense, right? What it is their thoughts. They are choosing in their minds to either feel good or to not feel good. And it has very little to do with their outward appearance and everything to do with what's going on inside their minds. So there are a couple tools that we can use to work on changing our thoughts, because when we change our thoughts, that's the first step in changing our identity. When we can change our thoughts, we can change our beliefs, then we're going to change who we believe we are. And we have the power to do that. So there are two tools I'm going to talk about to help us to do that. The first one is bridge thoughts. And I've learned that terminology from Meg Tilton. And I really like the idea of bridge thoughts. And what this is you need to look at your thoughts. And the best way I know to do this is to write them down. Just free write everything in this case that you feel, that you think about your body, and write it all down. When you see it on paper, it becomes really clear what you're actually thinking. If your thoughts are something like, I hate my body, I am so fat, then a bridge thought for that is a thought that's going to get you away from, just like crossing a bridge, we're going to get away from that thought to a thought that's more positive, but we still believe is true. So for a long time, if I didn't know this concept exactly, but I did try to improve my thoughts. And the way that I tried to do it is I would look in the mirror and say, no, my thighs are fine. I'm skinny. I'm good enough. I'm good. But here's the thing. I did not believe it. I did not believe what I was saying. I truly believed that I was fat, and to try to tell myself that I was skinny was not a workable bridge thought for me because I didn't believe it was true. So you need to find a thought that you believe is true that can replace your other thought. So if your thought is, I'm so fat, I hate my body, you might want to replace it with, my body is strong and gets me where I need to go. So this process of choosing a bridge thought is literally taking what you're thinking when you recognize that you are thinking that unhelpful thought, to change it up and say, no, I'm not going to think that anymore. I'm not going to think I am fat. I am going to think I am so strong, or whatever that bridge thought is for you that you can believe is true, that's going to help you to change your thoughts and to love yourself enough. Now, the second one is affirmations. Affirmations are another form of thought work, but the difference with affirmations is that instead of in the moment, like we're using those bridge thoughts, affirmations are something that we intentionally are planting in our minds. So these can be used during meditation or at certain points throughout the day, or maybe you just lay down before you're going to bed and you think affirmations. And these can be things like, I am grateful for my body. I am so glad that I have this strong and healthy and vibrant body. Whatever that affirmation is, and there are a lot that you can find online. You can write your own, whatever speaks to you. When you continually feed your mind with affirmations and you're building that up in your mind, then you're going to see a shift in the way that you think. Your thoughts are going to actually change. When your thoughts change, your identity changes. You are actually and literally changing who you are by changing the way that you think. So, a lot of people, when they hear me talk about loving your body and feeling good in your body, say, well, do I have to accept my body the way it is now if I need to lose weight, if I still feel like I want to lose weight? And to that, I would say, absolutely. We accept our bodies. We love our bodies where they are today. And I like to think of it the way we love our kids where they are today. It doesn't mean we think everything that they do is perfect and just right, but we love them where they are and just how they are. And as parents, we work to help them change. We work when we see that they need some correction, we work to correct them. And so as women in our bodies, the idea is that we love our bodies enough to nourish our bodies. We love our bodies enough to figure out what works for us, to find what helps us feel good in our bodies, and then to do that on a regular basis, to treat our bodies well and to nourish our bodies with good food and with movement and with sleep and with all those things. So one of the ways that I feel is super important to nourish your body is to eat real food. There are so many diets out there and different ways of eating, but the truth is we need to understand what works for our body. And in my research over the years on food and diets and weight loss, there are some things that come across that are in every diet and that are going to help us to nourish our body. And so I like to talk about the 4-part food formula, which has 4 elements that we should try as much as possible to include in our meals, not to beat ourselves up, not because we're wrong if we don't do these things, but because they really help our bodies to thrive and to have more energy. They help our skin to look good. They help just all the processes of digestion and everything to work better in our bodies. So I'm going to go over that really briefly. The 4-part food formula is vegetables, protein, fats, and low fructose fruits. So vegetables, trying to include as many vegetables as possible in our day is going to make a huge difference. In fact, it's the number one thing that you can do for long-term weight loss and long-term health. And I try to get in at least 10 servings of vegetables a day. And if that sounds like a lot more than what you're eating, it probably is a shift that would make a huge difference for you. So the way that I do that is by eating vegetables at every meal, even breakfast. And I have a green smoothie with my yogurt every morning. I often have a green smoothie in the afternoon as a snack. And so those help me get in lots of green leafy vegetables. Green leafy vegetables are by far the most nutritious vegetable there is. Really, any non-starchy vegetable is going to help you with health and more vitality. But the starches like corn and potatoes, I just want to point out, are not on this list. We're talking about non-starchy vegetables here. When you look at your plate, about half of it by volume should, and I know we don't like that word, but if you structure your meals this way, you want about half of your plate to be filled with vegetables. The thing is, when you eat that many vegetables, it's really going to help you to avoid some of the foods that are not as good for our body. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But just getting in those vegetables and working to get those in is the number one thing you can do. Okay, protein is the next one. Protein really fills you up. It helps to keep your muscles strong. It helps with a lot of the processes in the body. Fat is the same way. It's going to help fill you up and keep you satisfied, but it's really important here. So lean protein sources are especially helpful with building muscle and keeping you lean. That doesn't mean we don't want fat in our diet. We just want to make sure we have the right kind of fat. So fats that come from whole foods are going to be a lot more beneficial than fats that come from partial foods. So that means olives have fat in them, and olive oil is squozing out olives, and it's just the fat from those olives. If you can get the whole olive in your diet, then that's going to be a lot more beneficial for you than just the olive oil. Does that mean I never use oils or butter or anything? No, it doesn't. But I try to get more of the whole food fats and less of the oils and the refined fats, because they just aren't as beneficial to your body. And then with fruits, it's important to keep in mind that some fruits are a lot more sugary than other fruits. It will help to keep our blood sugar more stable if we prioritize those lower fructose fruits. So things like berries and citrus, which are so good for you, and they have a little bit less sugar than some of their tropical fruit counterparts. So with this in mind, one of the things that I love when talking about health and eating right is the idea of positive goals versus negative goals. And I learned this from Jonathan Baylor when he was on the podcast. He talked about the idea that we can never accomplish a negative goal. And the idea with that is that if we say, my goal is to not eat ice cream, my goal is to not eat junk food, how often do we do this? We say, I want to eat healthy. And so we start by thinking of what we're not going to do. Well, you can never accomplish a negative goal. That means all day you're working on not eating ice cream and you're not accomplishing your goal. What if instead of negative goals, you put in positive goals? Like, my goal, I choose to eat 10 or more servings of vegetables today. Well, then all throughout your day, you're eating a vegetable. Check that off your list. You're eating another one. Check it off. 10 checks, and you have accomplished what you set out to accomplish. You can work toward your goal. With a negative goal, you can't exactly work toward it. It's not the same thing, and it's definitely not the same thing in our minds, mentally. We don't have that same sense of accomplishment, of checking it off, of getting it done. That sense of checking something off, when we know we got something done, our brains love that. And there's a positive feedback loop because we did it. And our brains say, yes, I am so good at accomplishing things. I want to accomplish something else. That's why we like to-do lists. I know a lot of us like to write out our to-do list and check it off because there's something so magical about that process. And the magic comes because our brain likes it. There's positive reinforcement there for us. So that's just a really brief overview of how to nourish your body. And honestly, there are a lot of different ways that work for different people. Some people feel more nourished when they have more fat and they lean more toward a keto lifestyle. Some people feel more nourished when they have kind of a paleo lifestyle or different things. But really, it's important that you know how you feel more nourished. You know what nourishes your body, and you love yourself enough to nourish your body in a way that works for you. Now, with that being said, it's also important to love yourself enough to be okay with imperfection. And what I mean by that is I just outlined for you this 4-part food formula and the way you can structure your meals and have your meals be really healthy and all that good stuff. And I believe in that. And I try to eat that way 80% of the time. Because I was such a diet person before and I was so into dieting, it's really easy for me to feel like food is black and white. There's good food and there's bad food, and there's a certain way to eat and there's a certain way not to eat. And having this idea of the 80-20 rule has been really helpful for me to let go of some of the rigidity and to understand that we're not going for perfection here. So when I say 80%, I'm not sitting there calculating out, oh, we're 80% of my meals on target. No, but I just know that I have wiggle room in my diet, that most of the time I am going to eat to nourish my body. I'm going to choose my meals that really help me stay healthy and that help me to have the energy I want to have and do all those things for me. I'm going to choose those most of the time. But the other 20% of the time, I'm going to go out on a date with my husband and I'm going to order something that looks good, and I am not going to worry about the calories or the fact that using refined oils or any of these things. And I'm going to have a good time, relax, and just enjoy my meal. Sometimes we go out for ice cream as a family, or we bring ice cream in and we enjoy that together as a family. And so what I like to think of it as is 80% of your foods are chosen for health, and the other 20% are chosen for pleasure, but also they're there to feed not your body, but your soul. Because sometimes that connection, that fun with food, that is just what we need. And when we allow ourselves that little bit of wiggle room, it really helps us the rest of the time to want to eat right. I know that I feel better when I eat right. And so when I go on a date, it doesn't mean I'm going to get the, double bacon cheeseburger with French fries and a strawberry shake, because I know that's not going to make me feel good. Most of the time, I think I choose things that are pretty vegetable heavy because that's what I like. That's what my body likes. But if I want something a little bit different, I know that's okay too. And so having that wiggle room is going to make a huge difference. When we truly love ourselves enough, when we are a person, we have changed our identity to be someone who loves their body, then the tiny decisions don't matter quite so much anymore. We don't need someone to give us a meal plan of every little thing to eat because we recognize we are a person who knows what to eat. I am a person who knows how to take care of my body. And maybe there's a learning curve. Maybe sometimes we do need that help just to figure out, what it's going to look like for us. But over time, we slowly can move away from other people's ideas and really embrace what it means to take care of our own body and to love our own body and to truly feel good in our own body. So I hope that this has given you some ideas on how to love yourself enough. Love yourself enough to make that choice to say, yes, I choose to be a person who loves herself. Love yourself enough to choose better thoughts every single day and to work on those thoughts. And when those thoughts, the old thoughts, creep in, those non-body loving thoughts, chase them out, change them. You have the power to do that. You don't have to stay stuck in those old thought patterns. You can work through those thoughts and choose to love your body enough to have thoughts that uplift you. Choose to love your body enough to nourish your body every day so that you feel good, and choose to love your body enough to not have to be perfect. You're not here to be perfect. We are here to learn to do the best we can with our bodies. Love your body enough, and you will find that you will not only feel better than you ever have, but you will look better too. Because when we change that identity, when we change who we are, it naturally changes our habits, our processes, and it will also change the outcome. And that outcome is going to last a lot longer than the outcomes that are forced by us not quite changing who we are, but just trying to muscle through and change our habits. So I hope that this podcast has given you some ideas on what you can do. And my question for you today is, do you love yourself enough? I would love to hear your thoughts on that. What do you love yourself enough to do? Fill in the blank. And let me know on social media, on Facebook or Instagram at Moms Who Know Podcast. Do you love yourself enough? Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next week on the Moms Who Know Podcast.